Today we are going to be looking at the original version of Lupin that Monkey Punch created. This is the very first of the character that we've ever seen, and we see him in the manga that was first published in 1967, as well as certain installments here and there like The Mystery of Mama or The Woman Called Fujiko. This version of Lupin is completely different from the versions that we see today, so I think it's a good idea to go back and see exactly what kind of character this person is. As usual, I'm going to be breaking down my analysis into three main sections. The first one is going to be some background knowledge on the character and why he is who he is from a real world, more narrative perspective. Then we're going to be looking at why he is who he is from an in-universe perspective, assuming that he's like a real person. After that, we're going to be talking about all the versions and installments of the Lupin III franchise where this character is on display. Before we begin, let me know what you guys think about this scripted approach to the podcast. My last two episodes were more stream of consciousness, but I think it's a cool change of pace to actually script it out and see how neatly things come together. And sometimes I can ramble a little bit so my thoughts can be all over the place. Also, because it's a podcast, I really don't have a lot of visuals on screen, and it's mainly something for you to play in the background. For this one, I'm going to have a couple of visuals in the display box on the screen. It's like in the middle to the right a little bit. And so yeah, if you ever find yourself looking at the screen, you might see some things that coincide with the video. With all that out the way, let's begin. The original third character was unleashed on the world in October of 1967. Monkey Punch created this character after being inspired by two very popular figures. The first, obviously, is Arsène Lupin. These novels were written by Maurice Leblanc, and they were very inspirational to Monkey Punch. That kind of free style of writing, the idea that the main character can go wherever and do whatever he wants, and the idea that he can get any girl and steal any object he pleases, while doing so in a way that preserves his integrity, which is really important. Flashiness and that je ne sais quoi. That was something that really spoke to Monkey Punch. Not only that, but the mysteries that the story set up and worked through were something that he really gravitated towards, that drop you in the middle of a plot that's already happening and then reveal to you what's going on later. As you can see, Arsène Lupin was something that he really valued when creating the character. He's got the same calling cards, the same motivations, the same desire to steal what he wants or take what he wants, and he has that same irreverence about life that made the first Arsène Lupin an enigma. So obviously Monkey Punch is going to take that and he's going to put that in the character. That's why he's called Lupin III. Lupin III is obviously the grandson of Arsène Lupin. Because copyright wasn't a big thing in Japan, he could do that and get away with it. Now, like I said earlier, that's the only popular literary figure, or figure in general. The second main inspiration that he had was actually James Bond. At the time of the first manga release, James Bond was a worldwide phenomenon. Starting in 1964 with Goldfinger, everyone on the globe knew who James Bond was, and Sean Connery was crushing it as an actor in that role. The first James Bond movie was technically a couple years earlier in 1962, and even before then, there was a smaller TV-made film, but the main ones that we know were made by a group called Eon Productions and directors called Harry Saltzman and Albert Cubby Broccoli. And that's the one with the main James Bond, with Sean Connery, with Daniel Craig, Pierce Brosnan, and all that. And he's the one, those are the actors that made James Bond pretty popular. Everybody wanted to be him. He was pretty much guaranteed to make a successful movie because he was just good at what he did. At the time of publishing the first Lupin III manga, the James Bond movie, You Only Live Twice, would have just hit theaters, and it probably would have been making waves, especially because it was filmed in Japan. But I think it's more fair to say that the type of Bond that Monkey Punch was basing Lupin was more of Goldfinger and Thunderball, because those two interpretations of the character are the ones where Sean Connery knew that he was going to do well, and he was basically putting on his most entertaining performance as the super spy, and fans loved it. He was calm, cool, collected, he was able to get any girl, and he never really sweated anything on his missions. That type of cool and collected individual is something that Monkey Punch wanted to emulate when he made Lupin III. So what you're doing is you're taking these two incredibly cool characters and you're putting them together. Like you have the Arsène Lupin job where he's leaving the calling cards and he's doing what he wants, and then he takes the flavor of it, of James Bond, the way he moves, the way he talks, the way he doesn't care, and then he adds that with certain Mad magazines, certain Tom and Jerry like art styles and writing, and he makes the manga that we know and love today. Well, not a lot of people love it. I don't know if you should. Yeah, we're gonna get into that later, but it's the version of the character that kicked off the version of Lupin that we know and love today. So when we get into what makes Lupin the Third the character that he is from a more internal perspective and in-universe, we do have to again acknowledge the two main figures that inspired him. You have the master thief who is operating under the profession of his grandfather, leaving the calling cards and stealing from people in order to test himself. And instead of the chivalrous personality that he had, you replace it with that kind of hedonistic, irreverent, thrill-seeking personality of James Bond. And then you peel back the layers even more, and then you add this absolute love for freedom and experiences in the world and all it has to offer. And you basically get Lupin the Third in a nutshell when it comes to the original manga. And that's what we get, right? He's the grandson of Arsène Lupin. He's very rich and he comes from a family of wealth. And that wealth is probably what gave him his taste for the finer things in life. He wants the finest cars, the finest foods, the finest women, whatever you can think of to name. That's the type of appetite that Lupin has. Monkey Punch, he's done a lot of interviews, and in one of these interviews he did in 1978 in a pamphlet for the Mystery of Mamo, he was talking about how he wanted to draw a borderless comic, and I've definitely talked about this before. He wanted Lupin to be the type of person who could go wherever and do whatever he wants in the style of that original Arsène Lupin. So that's what he did, but instead of making him the kind of Robin Hood type character that the Arsène Lupin character was based on, he was mainly just running around and just doing what he wants, just causing havoc, messing with people. There are times where he would save somebody and do the quote-unquote right thing, but it seems like in this original version, those were just as flippant as the times that he would do something disgusting, like terrible. I'm gonna keep saying this in the video, if you're not into this kind of humor, you will definitely not like the manga. The humor isn't even something I really like. It's not my cup of tea, but it is interesting to see that character once in a while. And when we get to the third part where we talk about when this character was adapted for the screen, there is obviously going to be a level of sanitization, right? Because they have to make the main character likable, at least when you talk about a TV show or a movie screen and things like that, right? Now, for the comic, it's a little bit different because it was in the 60s and it was underground, but with how big the reach is on the screen, you have to play around with it. Let's keep going with his character description. I mentioned in the previous video that the three pillars of Lupin's character were individuality, freedom, and appreciation for beauty. I definitely think that these are still here, but it's a little bit different, right? Here, the love for freedom is obviously there, but he doesn't hold himself back like other versions do. He's fresh on the scene, and he still has that entitled mentality about him, right? He's just turning into a master thief. He thinks he can go anywhere and do whatever he wants and treat people however he wants because that's all he's ever known. And he has the skills to be that top dog, so he's going to indulge in that. His love for freedom is completely selfish right now, and he can only love things as far as it pleases him or makes him feel good. He's kind of like that. He's kind of like Fujiko later on in the series in that aspect, because Fujiko kind of just does whatever she wants and she's very materialistically minded, and that's how Lupin is. His sense of self is also evident here because he does want what he wants to do, and this time, no matter what he wants to do, whether it's completely contradictory to what he is or what he was doing before or whatever he had planned, he's still gonna do it because if that's what he wants to do at the time, that's what he's going to do. He's a thief, then he's gonna steal. If he's a car driver, he's gonna drive the car. He's gonna do whatever he wants to do, and he's gonna be whatever he needs to be, but he's going to unapologetically be himself. So whatever he likes, he's going to let you know that he likes it. And this kind of lets you know that he views the disguises as like a game, more so as like an extension of himself, like how Maurice LeBlanc wrote the original. Unlike the future installments where we see him develop more of a moral compass, here he just does whatever he wants to do and doesn't really think twice about it. And he can definitely let himself get carried away with that with a lot of the things that he wants to do, which definitely leads to some pretty dark places, especially in the manga. Nevertheless, he is very smart, and he is the leader of the Lupin Empire, which apparently has tens of thousands of individuals. He is a very successful criminal, and the manga goes through great lengths to let us know that. He's good at pretty much anything you can think of, and I think this goes back to his ability to think on the fly and to think without any limits. That's why I think he's smart, because he doesn't hold himself back. When he sees a conclusion that makes sense, he doesn't have any reservations about believing it, right? right? He doesn't have like personal beliefs that would stop him. And because of that, he's constantly able to push himself and push the boundaries of what can exist and what can't. Just because while other people might have limits that they mentally accept, Lupin by nature is freedom incarnate. He doesn't want to have any boundaries. He's going to try whatever he can to make something happen that he wants to happen. And that's definitely going to lead him into places where he might learn a thing or two that nobody else feels like they need to learn, just because he wants to have that skill in his back pocket, right? Some people aren't going to learn how to be as much of a thief as he wants to, but because he lets his mind go there, he's going to learn some things that most people aren't going to learn. And I think that's the key to him being a master thief, because he's not just a master thief in the manga, he's a master assassin, and he can pretty much do any dirty job that he wants to. The manga is interesting like that a little bit, because it seems like although he is still a thief, he's more of a jack of all trades when it comes to the underworld. He can be an assassin, a mercenary, a bounty hunter, a fixer, a thief, or whatever else strikes his fancy. This version of Lupin is really unique in that aspect. He has a lot of different skills, and he uses these skills as he sees fit to build his empire. Another thing to note about his intelligence, like I was talking about before, and you can really see this in Mystery of Mamo, is that he has this obsession with trying to explain everything around him in the most rational, logical, or scientific way possible. An example is when Mamo pulls up on Lupin, Jigen, and Fujiko in that room after they escape, and he just gives them like a fever dream and they're like freaking out. And then at the end of it, he just kind of leaves and lets them deal with that because he's, oh, I just showed them this crazy thing. How are they going to recover? And what Lupin does is he immediately starts looking around in the room, starts looking for things, and he finds like the bed was moved a little bit. He finds like a hole in the wall, and he concludes that somebody used the hole in the wall to fill the room with sleeping gas and like mess with them and move stuff around, right? So that's the type of person he is. And that's not a dumb conclusion at all, but he's going to look for the most logical solution instead of, oh, this is just supernatural. Whereas Jigen immediately was just like, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with that guy. Let's see. Because he's a trickster, he probably believes that everything has to be a trick. He has to be a ruse. There's always a wizard behind the curtain, and he's going to find out what it is. Eventually, he's proven to be somewhat correct in that movie, and it just goes to show for him that there's always a trick, and that mindset allows him to go through life with a whimsical but analytically logical eye. He doesn't assume what someone says is completely true. He's gonna look beneath the surface, right? So let's say, for example, if he's like in an argument with somebody and they're like giving it to him, and even if they have some things that he might consider to be true, he's not going to think of it as, oh, they're beating me, they're in the argument. He's going to think, okay, why are they beating me? Why do they feel this way? This isn't the only thing that could have been the case. There's other ways to look at it. Why are you focused on this one? Like, he's attacking it from different angles simultaneously. And because he constantly does that, he's able to look at the world in kind of a more open way. And it's what allows him to go through life with that kind of twinkle in his eye, right? When you combine that kind of mental approach to the like desire to do whatever he wants and says whatever he wants, you get somebody who, when left unchecked, could be very deadly and sinister, and that's exactly the type of Lupin we have in the manga. So I'm going to say it again, even though my script doesn't say it. If you do not like those kinds of jokes where, man, because this is the 60s, right? So they didn't view women as well as they should have. You can pick up what I'm putting down, right? There's some pages I didn't even want to read. If you don't like that, I don't know what you would, but if you don't like that, this isn't for you. If you're interested to see how it was, read at your own discretion, right? Because this guy, he's just basically having fun, stealing money from people, messing with people, taking girls that honestly can be, I did put it in my script, taking girls in ways that cannot be described. And again, this humor is not for you if you're not interested in that. I'm so weak. I have it written here like multiple times. Is it in my script? Little peek behind the curtain. In my script is one paragraph after this part, but I'm just gonna keep hammering it in because you have to be ready. Okay, this is definitely not like part 4 Lupin, part 6 Lupin, goodbye partner Lupin. Definitely not no Cagliostro Lupin. This guy is the real deal. Like even part 1 Lupin isn't as bad as this guy, so just keep that in mind. So now we're gonna get into the times where this version of the character was portrayed on screen in its most literal way. So again, due to the irreverent and sexual nature of the jokes and just how insensitive they are, we really don't see him that much, which is for good reason. There are a couple of instances where we can see him though, and if you're interested in watching like the spirit of that, here are the ones that I have right here. So first of all, we have the pilot film of 1969. This was originally created to gain interest of the character and see if anybody wanted to pick him up as a movie project. And while that did eventually work out, it definitely had its dead stint. The point here is that we can clearly see this type of Lupin and who he is. He can do anything he sets his mind to. He's at the top of his criminal game, and he doesn't hold himself back from enjoying anything with what the world has to offer, because and it's like how I mentioned with one of the pillars that he has love for the world, but whereas Cagliostro has more of a healthier, I respect the world, I respect everything, and I want to see more of that beauty. He has this kid in the candy store, I love candy because it tastes good, versus I love candy, I'm gonna taste the candy's good, but also I'm interested in how the factory makes candy. I'm interested in what different types of candy there are and what good traits and bad traits candy has. How can we improve candy? I'm interested, you know what I mean? Like, he's interested in all of it, whereas this version of Lupin is, I like candy, it tastes good, that's it for me. It's funny, I think he even ate candy in the next version I'm gonna talk about, which is The Mystery of Manga. This was specifically made to target the manga fans, and we definitely see that here. He's goofy, he's all over the place, he's using his skills to basically mess with the enemy, and he's pursuing Fujiko with a very selfish undertone, and he's willing to throw his friends under the bus if it means getting what he wants. Nevertheless, he wins not because of innate morality, but because the villain is literally just that much worse. Like, Momo literally had a clone of, I can't say his name, but just take a wild guess who I'm going to talk to. His name starts with A and his last name starts with H, right? And he had a clone of him just walking down the road. This bad guy was no joke. Even though from his perspective, he was just trying to learn from the most quote unquote powerful figures in history. If you can call that a justification, still sus, bro. But that's the type of villain Lupin is dealing with. And against someone who's learning from that guy, you can't really look worse than that, even though Manga Lupin will push those boundaries. But in the Mama movie, obviously you still have that kind of manga energy, but it's toned down a little bit because he wants to show Mamo that you can't be a god, you can't be immortal. Everything has a time to grow and die, and there's a beauty in that, so just enjoy the ride, which goes directly into his hedonistic nature. And even though he is selfish, he understands that things should be enjoyed in their time, and that's who he is. That's also why I think he's easily able to let go of some things, like his friends in the movie, just because he's, oh, it sucks, but I guess this is just that time for them. Even though I don't necessarily think that was him letting them go, I think that was more of him trying to get them out of the picture as quickly as possible, because he knew he wanted to help Fujiko. He knew they didn't want to help Fujiko because he said he wouldn't, and so he was like, this sucks, I can't pull them aside and say, or try to convince them, because I already tried that, they're not gonna go for it. The best thing I can do is just try to get them out the way as soon as possible. So I think that's how he did it. I don't know, there's nothing that represents that in the story, except for the fact that he doesn't seem like he's really taking them seriously. That's how I read it, right? So we have that Mystery of Mamo, that version. Then we also have the first half of part 3. Now this is interesting in the sense that the director wanted to put more than one style in there in terms of Monkey Punch's original style. He wanted to do part 1's director, Osumi. He wanted to do that. He wanted to put more of Miya's style in there. He wanted to combine those three. I think his name was Yuzo Aoki. That was the director in part 3. And he was saying how there was basically 3 big versions of Lupin. There was Osumi's version, there's Miyazaki's version, and then there's part 2. And obviously to that I would add Monkey Punches, but he's probably talking about animation. And so he draws the character like how they were in the manga, and he takes all those 3 styles and puts them together. And what you get is that when you have those shifting styles, you have a very kind of goofy storytelling, goofy visuals, and you have a lot of nudity and a lot of not graphic but more irreverent violence, because this wasn't on TMS, this was on another program, so they could get away with more. And I feel like when you combine all of that, you have this part 3, at least in the first half, that feels similar to the manga. So I put that in there, definitely something you should check out if you're interested in that. Then I have The Woman Called Komine. These designs and characterizations were definitely based off the manga, and that was the intention. Lupin here is no different, but I think this is where we have the best example of a Monkey Punch version of the character that's modernized for the 21st century. That's not to say that he's a morally upstanding character or that they've scrubbed all the dirt off his messier character traits, but it's balanced in the way that it seems like it can make sense if you're trying to put together a personality profile. If you're trying to take that 60s character, put him in the 21st century, and look at him from an objective perspective as a person and try to figure him out on a deeper level, The Woman Called Fujiko Mine is probably the closest you're gonna get to that. He has that same twinkle in his eye, nothing really gets to him. He steals because it's fun, to think against the opposition. He's the kind of guy still who likes to challenge himself intellectually, and I think that in this version that's because his skills and abilities allow him to roam the world free in a way that he wants to. So he has to make sure that he keeps those skills up. So he has to keep goading the competition so they can keep challenging him, so that they can keep getting better. You see how like cyclical this is? You know what I mean? Like he wants to be free. In order to be free, he learns a lot of skills. The skills have to grant him the freedom, so he has to keep testing them. So the more he tests it, the more freedom he can have. You see what I'm saying? It kind of all goes together. And the way he deals with Fujiko, he has that same intrigue in her, but he never really lets it get too deep, and he never really takes life seriously. It just, oh, she's cute and she's smart. That's cool. Let's see, this version of Lupin is definitely not for the faint of heart, and if you don't like that kind of character, I would definitely recommend going to a different part or movie in general. I do find some of his personality traits to be interesting, but it is hard to get through some of the installments when I know how bad it can get. I still think that objectively, some of these installments are good anime products, like they're thought out, right? They have good animation, they have a good plot, they have good plot progression from that perspective. But in terms of the content, it definitely takes a lot of getting used to, and I definitely don't blame anybody who just wants to not get involved in that. There are lots of other installments that have the same gritty nature without having that kind of humor or morally bankruptness as a main character that Lupin has here. But it is interesting to see the type of character we get when we strip him down and let Monkey Punch do the talking. That's going to be the end of the video, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, comment down below, let me know if there's anything that I missed. Let me know what you guys think about the new format with the script. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I'm probably going to go back to using notes. Maybe I'll have a little paragraph or like a couple of sentences that I really want to get through. But if you really listen to the video, you can tell that some parts I'm reading and other parts I'm just not. I'm a lot more comfortable just going stream of consciousness, which is how I did my other two videos. I had 4 sentences of notes for those videos, and I just went off the top of my head. If you guys did this approach, let me know down below. I think I'm just gonna do like little notes, little small paragraphs to keep the narrative tight as far as the video is concerned. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think about this version of Lupin, your experience with reading the manga, and that's pretty much it. I will talk to you guys soon.